Fallout's scariest lore is what happened to ordinary people. A teddy bear sits beside a skeleton, and Fallout does not explain it. No enemy health bar, no dramatic villain speech, no giant monster walking through the wall. Just a room that has been quiet for 200 years, with one object placed close enough to the bones that your mind starts building the story before the game says anything at all. That is where Fallout becomes truly frightening. Not in the biggest battles, not even in the vaults with the most twisted experiments. The scariest lore is often found in places where nothing is moving anymore. Because Fallout's apocalypse did not happen to humanity as an abstract idea. It happened to ordinary people. That is the horror this world keeps returning to. Fallout is full of famous monsters, but the stories that stay with you are often smaller. So this is not about the most powerful factions or the biggest creatures in the wasteland. This is about the people who had the least control and paid the highest price. The families who reached the vault door. Too late. The first real horror of Fallout 4 is not the mushroom cloud. It is the gate. Before the blast reaches Sanctuary Hills, before the elevator lowers the sole survivor's family into Vault 111, before the cryogenic pods reveal what Vault Tech was really doing, there is that brief moment at the checkpoint. Soldiers are holding the line. Civilians are panicking. The Vault Tech list decides who moves forward and who stays behind. And in that moment, the apocalypse becomes something more personal than nuclear war. It becomes selection. Sanctuary Hills had been sold the idea of safety. The Vault Tech representative appears at the sole survivor's door on October 23, 2077, asking questions, collecting information, and registering the family for Vault 111. The whole interaction is uncomfortable because the world has not ended yet, but survival is already being processed like customer service. The vault is not presented as a public right. It is a private, managed, limited opportunity. Then the alarms come. Everything that looked like normal suburban life breaks at once. Everyone understands the vault is the only chance nearby, but not everyone has the same access. At the gate, military authority decides who gets through. Families are not equal anymore. Names on a list matter more than fear, pleading, or proximity to the blast. The people left outside are not villains. They are just unlucky, unselected, or not important enough to be included in the version of survival Vault Tech prepared. And the cruelest part is that the people who get inside are not truly saved either. Vault 111 is not a normal shelter. The residents are told they are going through decontamination, but they are placed into cryogenic suspension as part of an experiment. Nate, Nora, Sean, and the other accepted residents are not entering a community built to rebuild after the war. They are entering a laboratory that freezes them under a lie. The people outside die because they are denied the vault. The people inside suffer because they trusted it. That makes the opening of Fallout 4 darker than it first appears. It is not simply a family escapes the bombs. It is a snapshot of how the old world handled human life at the end. Soldiers at the perimeter, a corporation managing access, civilians begging for entry, and a scientific experiment waiting below. The wasteland begins before the elevator reaches the bottom. And that is what makes the families outside Vault 111 so haunting. We barely know them. They ran to the place they were told meant safety, and arrived just in time to learn that safety had a guest list. The people who survived the blast and became ghouls. Some of Fallout's saddest people survived the apocalypse. A ghoul is often treated like a monster by the wasteland, but many ghouls began as ordinary people who simply did not die when the bombs fell. They were civilians, workers, soldiers, entertainers, parents, mechanics, neighbors, and children who absorbed enough radiation to change forever, but not enough to end. Their skin rotted, their voices changed, their bodies aged strangely. Some became almost immune to time, and then the world that came after learned to fear them. Vault 12 is one of the clearest examples of survival turned into betrayal. In Bakersfield, the vault door was designed not to seal properly, exposing the residents to radiation. The result was not protection, it was ghoulification on a mass scale. The survivors eventually became part of Necropolis, a city of ghouls who existed because the very shelter meant to save them had been built to fail. For many people, becoming a ghoul was not a choice, a mutation experiment, or a villain origin. It was the form survival took when every better option had been removed. Then there is Gob in Megaton. He is not a monster. He is a bartender working in Moriarty's saloon, and the way Colin Moriarty treats him shows how ordinary cruelty survived the war perfectly intact. Gob speaks, worries, works, and clearly understands humiliation, but Moriarty calls him zombie and treats him like property. Megaton is one of the first major settlements in Fallout 3, and even there, a ghoul can be openly degraded in front of customers. Raul Tejada in New Vegas carries a different kind of pain. He survived long enough to remember the old world and everything he lost after it. His grief over his sister, Rafaela, is not some ancient footnote to him. It is a wound that had more than 2 centuries to settle into his personality. Raul can joke, complain, repair machines, and act like the sarcastic old mechanic, but under that is one of Fallout's most ordinary tragedies. A brother who lived too long after failing to protect someone he loved. Fallout 4 adds the Peabody family through Kid in a Fridge. Billy Peabody survives as a ghoul child, locked inside a refrigerator for around 200 years. His parents, Matt and Carol, are still alive in Quincy, also ghoulified. The quest is strange, almost absurd, but the emotional idea is awful. A family survived the Great War, but only by becoming something much of the wasteland would shoot before asking questions. Nuka World's Kitty Kingdom makes the fear even sharper through Oswald and Rachel. Oswald the Outrageous stays behind with feral ghouls he still sees as friends, clinging to the hope that a cure exists. But Rachel's holotapes show the painful truth he does not want to accept. The people around him are not simply sick in a temporary way. They are losing themselves. Oswald is not just guarding a theme park. He is guarding the remains of a community he cannot admit is already gone. That is the final terror of ghoulification, going feral. A ghoul can stay aware for centuries, but the fear of losing language, memory, judgment, and identity is always nearby. The children of Vault 75. Vault 75 is hidden under a school, not under a military base, not under a prison, not under a corporate research campus with warning signs and armed guards. It is under Malden Middle School, a place where families would already associate the building with children, safety, classrooms, routines, and authority. On the day the bombs fell, that made the vault feel like a logical place to run. And that was the trap. Vault 75 accepted families under the idea of protection, but its true purpose was the refinement of human genetics. After entry, the adults were separated from their children and executed. The children were kept alive, not because Vault Tech cared about saving them, but because they were the real material of the experiment. The victims are not soldiers. They are children who trusted the adults running the only world they had left. The Vault system was designed to shape them from the beginning. The children were raised in a controlled environment where their bodies, intelligence, obedience, and potential could be tested. They were trained physically. They were educated under the Vault's rules. And they were monitored, sorted, and measured. The language around the experiment is cold because the people running it did not see children in the normal human sense. they saw generations of possible improvement. Uptopland makes the horror even more twisted. It was a training environment, a fake surface world where children could be tested for combat and survival. Then came graduation. In a normal school, graduation means growing up and leaving. In Vault 75, it meant judgment. When subjects reached the required age, they were evaluated. Some could be recruited into the vault staff or program. Some could be used for genetic material. Others could be disposed of. The whole structure turns childhood into a pipeline, with every lesson and test leading toward the question of whether the child was useful enough to keep. It does not simply kill children. It raises them inside a world where they are never allowed to understand themselves as free human beings. Their childhood, friendships, fears, training, bodies, and futures all belong to a project designed before they ever entered the vault. By the time the sole survivor reaches Vault 75 in 2287, the gunners occupy the ruins. The original experiment is gone, but the evidence remains in terminals, access cards, locked areas, and the structure of the vault itself. Fallout often tells stories through absence, and Vault 75 is full of that absence. The missing parents, the children who aged into subjects, the teenagers who never had a normal future, and the rooms built to process them like inventory. A school became a selection program. Children became stock, and the adults in charge called it the future of humanity. The people of Vault 11 who turned democracy into murder. Vault 11 did not begin with monsters, it made them slowly. The residents were not dropped into a vault full of mutants or raiders. They were placed inside a political machine designed to turn ordinary civic life into murder. The vault's central lie was simple. Every year the residents had to sacrifice one person, usually the overseer, or the vault computer would kill everyone. Leadership became a death sentence. Elections became survival battles, and campaigns stopped being about policy and became about who could avoid becoming the next victim. It is hard to think of a more twisted Vault-Tec experiment because Vault 11 weaponized democracy itself. Over time, political blocs formed inside the vault. Groups like the Justice Bloc gained power, and the selection process became corrupt, coercive, and brutal. Catherine Stone's story is one of the most personal pieces of that collapse. Members of the Justice Bloc, led by Roy Gottlieb, coerced her by threatening to nominate her husband, Nathan Stone, as overseer. When they betrayed her anyway, and Nathan was nominated, Catherine responded by killing several of them. Then, Catherine becomes overseer and changes the system through Overseer Order 745, making the annual sacrifice random instead of political. On paper, that removes the campaign corruption, but in reality, it spreads the terror across everyone. Now any resident can be selected, and nobody can fully organize their way out. The Vault Society becomes a lottery of death. Eventually, Vault 11 collapses into violence. The residents rebel, and the civil order fails. By the end, only 5 survivors remain. And when they finally refuse to sacrifice another person, the Vault computer reveals the truth. Refusal was the correct answer. The experiment was designed to test whether the residents would reject the demand. They had been allowed to stop at any time. That is the most devastating part. Vault 11 did not need to kill those people directly. It only needed to make them believe murder was necessary. The residents built the rest of the machine themselves because they were afraid. After the truth is revealed, 4 of the final 5 survivors kill themselves. One person leaves, or at least refuses to die with the others. The entrance recording and skeletons outside the vault make the ending feel even colder. It shows that people do not have to be born cruel to participate in cruelty. They only need a system that convinces them the alternative is worse. The addicts, Vault-Tec, let heal, before destroying them. Vault 95 is disturbing because it almost proves people can get better. At first, the vault was built around residents with histories of substance addiction. In another world, that could have been one of Vault-Tech's rare humane ideas, a sealed community where people had structure, support, safety, routine, and the chance to recover away from the chaos of the outside world. And for several years, Vault 95 actually seems to have worked. The residents were not doomed from the first day because recovery was impossible. They built something. They attended support meetings. They lived together under rules and routines. And they formed a community around sobriety. They had the chance to prove that people with addiction histories were not broken beyond repair. Vault-Tech let them prove it. Then, Vault-Tech destroyed it. A planted Vault-Tech agent lived among the residents from the beginning, waiting for the correct time. After 5 years, that agent revealed a hidden stash of chems, alcohol, and addictive substances inside the vault. The goal was not rescue, it was observation. Vault-Tech wanted to see what would happen to a recovery community when temptation was deliberately introduced after years of progress. That makes Vault 95 one of the most malicious vault experiments in Fallout 4. It did not simply exploit weakness, it created hope first. It gave people time to trust the system, trust each other, and trust themselves. Then, it attacked the exact part of their lives they had been fighting to rebuild. The ruins show what happened next. By 2287, Vault 95 is occupied by gunners, but the old story remains in terminals, skeletons, hidden rooms, and the layout of the place. The recovery community is gone. What is left is evidence of a social experiment that treated relapse, panic, betrayal, and collapse as data. Kate's companion quest, Benign Intervention, brings the tragedy back into the present. Kate is addicted to Psycho, and the sole survivor can bring her to Vault 95 to use an experimental device that cures her addiction. That quest adds another layer because Vault 95 still contains the possibility of healing. Even after everything Vault-Tech did, and even after the community collapsed, the location still holds a machine that can help someone survive addiction. That is why its ordinary victims matter so much. They were people struggling with addiction, and Fallout treats their suffering seriously by showing how monstrous it is to turn that struggle into an experiment. The scary part is not that some of them relapsed. The scary part is that a corporation planned their relapse in advance. It turned recovery into a trap, trust into a variable, and human vulnerability into a controlled test. The Sierra Madre workers trapped inside their suits. The Sierra Madre was built for people who could afford to dream while everyone else did the dangerous work. Frederick Sinclair imagined the Sierra Madre as a beautiful resort, a fortress, a casino, and a gift for Vera Keyes. The guests were supposed to see luxury: red carpets, glowing signs, preserved suites, casino floors, soft music, and a place where the old world's richest people could hide from the future. But before any guest could enjoy that dream, workers had to build it, and those workers became the Ghost People. The Ghost People are terrifying when the courier first sees them in 2281. They move through the villa in sealed suits, carrying gas bombs, throwing spears, knives, demolition charges, and traps. They shuffle, twitch, click, breathe through damaged gear, and hunt through the red fog like the Sierra Madre itself has learned to kill trespassers. But the most disturbing part is what they used to be. They were not demons. They were ordinary laborers, maintenance workers, and locals trapped in the systems that were supposed to protect them. The Sierra Madre's cloud made the environment toxic, and the workers used sealed hazmat suits to survive conditions around the villa. Those suits became their prison. The cloud corroded and damaged the seals, clasps, and mechanisms until the people inside could not simply remove them and walk away. Then the cloud changed them. The result was a kind of half-life. The workers inside the suits were mutated, preserved, and turned into hostile things that still patrol the ruined resort. That is why the ghost people feel different from normal ghouls. They are not just irradiated bodies. They are bodies trapped inside industrial protection gear, twisted by the same environmental hazard the gear was meant to defend against. Even the gameplay reinforces the horror. You can knock ghost people down, but they are not truly safe to ignore unless you dismember them or destroy the body properly. Otherwise, they can rise again. Dead money forces the player to treat them like broken machinery, cut the limb, finish the body, and make sure it stops moving. The Sierra Madre is full of famous tragedies: Sinclair's obsession, Vera's suffering, Dean Domino's betrayal, Christine Royce losing her voice and body autonomy, and Father Elijah trying to turn the resort into a weapon. But the ghost people are the quieter horror underneath all of them. They are the labor cost of the dream, the people who built the luxury and then became part of the warning system. The rich were supposed to arrive later. The casino was supposed to open. The resort was supposed to become a monument, but the workers were already trapped in the machinery before the party ever started. The town of Huntersville and the people turned into test subjects. Huntersville did not become a nightmare because the bombs fell. By the time Appalachia turns into the setting of Fallout 76, Huntersville is already remembered as one of the clearest examples of pre-war America turning ordinary people into laboratory material. The town was not a military base. It was a community in West Virginia, close enough to West Tech's research operations that its people became useful to someone else's experiment. The horror came through the water. West Tech was working with the forced evolutionary virus in Appalachia, and Huntersville's water supply was contaminated as part of that research. That means the people affected were not asked, recruited, warned, or given a choice. They drank, bathed, cooked, and lived inside an experiment they did not know was happening. The transformation into early supermutants did not begin with raiders dragging victims to vats after the apocalypse. It began with a pre-war corporation and government-backed science using civilians as hidden test subjects. That is why Huntersville is one of Fallout's most disturbing ordinary people stories. It shows that some of the Wasteland's monsters were made before the Wasteland existed. Imagine being a resident there before the bombs. You are not thinking about becoming part of FEV history. You are thinking about work, family, bills, supplies, food, local problems, maybe the war in the news, maybe the strange activity around West Tech. Then people begin changing, bodies grow, minds deteriorate, and violence spreads. The familiar town becomes a containment problem, and the people inside become evidence that someone powerful crossed a line. The official response only makes the story colder. Fallout repeatedly shows that pre-war institutions did not treat these disasters as moral failures. They treated them as security problems. That is the real fear of Huntersville. The transformation is horrifying, but the system behind it is worse. Supermutants are scary because they are huge, violent, and physically overwhelming. But Huntersville asks what happened before the green skin and the rage. And FEV did not stop there. The same kind of research would echo through Mariposa, Vault 87, the Institute, the Masters Unity, and the Enclave's modified strains. Huntersville is one early wound in a much larger pattern. Institutions deciding that human biology belonged to them if the results were valuable enough. They were not trying to evolve. They were people living near a facility that considered them acceptable collateral. Huntersville reminds us to fear the world that made them. Because before a mutant ever lifted a weapon, someone signed off on poisoning a town. The Pitt's workers who slowly became trogs. The Pit is terrifying because the monsters are not outside the city. They are what the city does to people. By 2277, when the lone wanderer reaches Pittsburgh and Fallout 3's The Pit, the place has become an industrial nightmare of smoke, rust, slavery, radiation, raiders, steel mills, and disease. The city is not just ruined, it is actively hostile to the human body. The air, ground, water, factories, and old pollution all feel like they are still working together to punish anyone trapped there. The condition behind the trogs is called troglodyte degeneration contagion, or TDC. It is tied to Pittsburgh's mixture of radiation, industrial toxins, and environmental contamination. That means trogs are not an invading species. They are not outsiders crawling in from some distant cave. They are the end result of people living too long in a place that has become poisonous. Asher's Pit is built on forced labor. Slaves work the steel mill, collect steel ingots, move through deadly industrial zones, and live under raider control. The city's production matters because Asher believes he is rebuilding something. He wants industry, order, and eventually a cure for the disease destroying his people. But the entire system rests on people who are suffering now, exposed now, and degenerating now. That is where Sandra and Marie become central to the moral horror. Sandra, Asher's wife, studies TDC and believes their infant daughter Marie may hold the key to a cure because of her natural resistance. Marie is not just a baby in the story. She is the possible future of the Pit. That is why Werner wants her taken and why Asher refuses to give her up. The whole DLC turns on a terrible question. Who gets to control the one hope in a city built on slavery? But while Asher, Sandra, and Werner argue over the future, ordinary workers are still breathing the Pit's air. They are the slaves in the mill, the laborers sent into the steel yard, the sick and exhausted bodies keeping the city alive, the people who may not live long enough to see any cure, even if Sandra is right. Every trog attack below the city carries that shadow. That is why the Pit is more disturbing than a simple slave city story. The exploitation is bad enough on its own, but Fallout adds the biological endpoint. Work does not only break the body through exhaustion. In the Pit, the city can mutate you, degrade you, and turn you into something everyone else fears. Trogs are not proof that humans failed to survive the city. They are proof that surviving inside the wrong city can become its own form of transformation. Randall Clark and the ordinary families who passed through Zion. Randall Clark's story is not frightening because he becomes a monster. It is frightening because he stays human through things that should have destroyed him. In Honest Hearts, the Courier can find Randall Clark's journal entries scattered through Zion Canyon. The Sorrows remember him as the father in the caves. But before he became a legend, he was just a man trying to survive the end of the world. A former U.S. Army soldier, a husband, a father, someone who happened to be away from his family when the bombs fell. Randall survives the Great War in Zion, but his wife and son are in Salt Lake City. When he finally reaches the city, he learns they are gone. Fallout does not need a cinematic cutscene for that grief. The journal entries are enough. A man survives the apocalypse only to realize survival has separated him from the only people he wanted to return to. From there, his life becomes a long record of isolation, violence, guilt, and unwanted responsibility. He takes shelter in caves, counts supplies, moves through the canyon, watches the world change, and writes because writing may be the only way to keep himself from disappearing completely. His logs are frightening because they are practical and emotional at the same time. Food, ammunition, roots, dates, grief, anger, judgment. The details are ordinary enough to feel real. Then other people enter Zion, a Mexican family, children, refugees, groups passing through. Some are harmless, some are desperate. The Vault 22 refugees are among the darkest. After coming into Zion, they prey on others, and Randall wages a hidden war against them. He kills from the shadows, not as a superhero or faction leader, but as one man trying to stop worse suffering from spreading through the canyon. That is what makes his story so different from the rest of Fallout. Randall Clark does not build an army. He protects people who may never know his name. Eventually, the children he watches over become the roots of what will later be known as the Sorrows. He leaves supplies and warnings. He becomes a guardian figure without revealing himself fully. The Father in the Caves is not a god in the literal sense. He is the memory of a man whose hidden acts became sacred after he died. The scary part is how much pain sits underneath that legend. Randall's life after the bombs is not heroic in a clean way. It is lonely. He helps people, but he also kills. He protects children, but cannot save his own. He becomes important to a future tribe, but dies as a man who spent decades carrying grief through caves. He is remembered almost mythically by the Sorrows, but his journals bring him back down to earth. He was not born as folklore. He was a person who lost his family. He became the kind of protector the wasteland sometimes creates when there is no institution left to do the protecting. Randall Clark's story is scary because it removes spectacle. Just one man surviving long enough to become evidence of everything the apocalypse takes and everything it can force a person to become. The skeletons that tell stories without names. Pulaski Preservation Shelters are one of the clearest examples of ordinary people being sold false survival in Fallout. They appear across places like the Capital Wasteland and the Commonwealth as one-person emergency capsules placed on sidewalks, near roads, outside buildings, and in city streets. They were not vaults. They were consumer survival booths, advertised to civilians who wanted protection without access to something like vault tech. That is why the skeletons inside or around them matter. A person who climbed into a Pulaski shelter was not trying to become part of history. They were trying to survive the first seconds of nuclear war. The booth door closed. The blast came. 200 years later, the player finds the result. A metal capsule still standing, sometimes with bones inside, proving that the product outlasted the customer. A company sold a survival object. A citizen trusted it. The citizen died, and the object remained as advertising without a buyer. Fallout uses that same logic in offices, schools, clinics, apartments, diners, and subway stations. The skeletons are not placed randomly. They are usually attached to a room function. A skeleton slumped over a desk points to someone who was still working or waiting for instructions when everything changed. A skeleton behind a locked door points to someone who could not get out. A skeleton beside a suitcase points to evacuation. A skeleton beside a bed points to someone who stayed in place instead of running. And a skeleton in a subway tunnel points to panic underground, where people may have believed concrete and depth would protect them better than open streets. Fallout 4's Boston is filled with this kind of evidence. The city has pre-war offices where terminals still preserve employee complaints, corporate memos, security logs, repair requests, and emergency instructions while skeletons remain in the same workplace. The same thing happens in ruined medical spaces. Hospitals and clinics in Fallout are not just combat locations. They preserve the problem of people who could not run. A patient in a bed, a body near an operating room, or remains in a waiting area changes the meaning of the room immediately. Healthy civilians might have tried to reach vaults or shelters. Patients, injured people, and people dependent on staff had fewer options. When the bombs fell, medical need became another trap. Schools make the same point with different objects. A desk, a locker, a lunchbox, a toy, or a child-sized space tells the player who the room was built for before the war. If a classroom is ruined and the remains are still there, the player understands that the Great War did not only erase soldiers, politicians, and scientists. It erased students in places that were supposed to be ordinary. Suffolk County Charter School in Fallout 4 is a good example of how Fallout layers this horror with corporate abuse. The school is connected to the experimental food paste program, where children were given a strange government-approved nutritional paste. The later ruins are full of feral ghouls, old school materials, terminals, and evidence that children were used in a pre-war test long before the bombs. Super-duper marts also show ordinary death through environment. These stores appear in different Fallout games as ruined supermarkets, full of checkout lanes, shelves, stockrooms, pharmacy counters, and employee areas. They are not military bunkers or secret labs. They are places where people bought food. When skeletons or remains appear in these spaces, the setting changes the story. These were shoppers, clerks, pharmacists, guards, or people trying to loot food after the first wave of collapse. Subway systems in Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 carry the same factual detail on a larger scale. Metro stations and tunnels contain wrecked trains, service corridors, ticket areas, maintenance rooms, and human remains. After the war, they became routes for raiders, feral ghouls, mirelurks, and scavengers. But before all that, they were crowded civilian infrastructure. Skeletons in those tunnels represent people who were trapped during panic. Fallout also uses object placement to give unnamed bodies a role. A skeleton beside a weapon suggests defense or suicide. A skeleton beside a safe suggests someone was guarding supplies, money, records, or valuables. A skeleton in a bathtub suggests someone tried to use the tub as shelter, something associated with real nuclear attack advice. And a skeleton near a radio or terminal suggests someone was waiting for information. This is why teddy bears, lunchboxes, baby cribs, wedding rings, suitcases, briefcases, and toys matter so much in Fallout's environmental storytelling. They identify the kind of ordinary person without needing dialogue. A briefcase means office worker, traveler, or businessman. A lunchbox means school or childhood. A crib means an infant once lived there. A suitcase means someone believed escape was possible. And a wedding ring means the dead person was not only a corpse in a room, but someone's spouse. Fallout's world has famous names attached to major events. Robert House in the Lucky 38, Richard Gray at Mariposa, Roger Maxson at Mariposa Military Base, the Enclave on the oil rig, Father in the Institute, Caesar at the fort, and overseers inside vaults. But the majority of the dead were not leaders. They were residents, workers, shoppers, patients, students, guards, prisoners, commuters, and families. The game preserves them through position and context instead of biography. A vault experiment can be explained by terminals, but an unnamed skeleton cannot do that. The player has to read the room, what building this is, where the body is placed, what object is nearby, what doors are locked, what containers are empty, what terminal entries remain, and what threat later moved into the same space. That is why these skeletons belong at the end of this video. They reduce Fallout's largest events to physical evidence. Vault-Tech's promises become bones behind sealed doors. Fallout's biggest horrors are easy to identify. But the stories that stay in your head are often the ones belonging to people with no power at all. That is the real reason Fallout's ordinary people are so frightening to think about. They did not choose the systems that destroyed them. Most of them were not trying to rule the wasteland, control humanity, reshape evolution, or build a new order. They were trying to get inside a vault, raise children, survive addiction, do a job, drink clean water, protect a family, or make it through one more day. And then history crushed them anyway. That is what makes Fallout different from a simple monster story. Every vault experiment, every corporate crime, every war, every mutation, and every faction ideology eventually comes down to ordinary people who had to live with the consequences. So, which ordinary Fallout story disturbed you the most? Was it Vault 75, Vault 11, Vault 95, The Ghost People, Huntersville, Randall Clark, or one of those silent skeleton scenes the game never explains? Drop it in the comments. And if you want more deep Fallout lore breakdowns like this, hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next one.